a tweet. This is, I suppose, as good a place as any. It's a screenshot of a tweet. The tweet was from Everything Rebs. Hey, Dad, the tweet says, just to make sure I understand this correctly, Zach Arnett will be coaching at Ole Miss along with one of the best staffs in the country while getting paid from Mississippi State? This is too good. I mean, yeah.
Is this where I'm supposed to come in and do the, y'all just want to be so bad, you hire all our former coaches. Is that what I'm supposed to do that? I'm not well-versed in that particular part.
I don't think that really fits your I don't think that works for this scenario.
It doesn't work for me.
Not when you fired the guy.
I got to work a rent-free in here somewhere. I don't know how to do that.
No, I don't think those are applicable, actually, in this situation.
I don't know, man.
This is an interesting move.
Mm-hmm.
A well-thought-of defensive coordinator who got a head coaching job that he probably was not ready for, but made sense for lots of reasons at the time.
Yeah, would not have gotten that job had there not been tragedy.
No, of course not. But
100%.
people really thought highly of Zach Arnett and the job that he did as a defensive coordinator. He's fired by Mississippi State before the season comes to an end last year. And so he is available in the job market. His name bounced around on some searches as coordinator positions were being found around the country for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't want him. Maybe he didn't want them. Whatever. That did not happen. And Lane Kiffin has now hired Zach Arnett as a defensive analyst. He is not an on-field coach. He is a defensive analyst. The first thing, and I mean, it's not nearly as much fun to talk about it this way. This is not uncommon. Right? Nick Saban made a living hiring coaches who were fired from other places who were good at their jobs and bringing them in as analysts. I mean, people called it like the coaching halfway house. It was where people went to resurrect careers. I'm not saying that that's what this is, but I do think about what Zach Arnett brings to that staff in terms of a defensive mind and the way he approaches blitzes in particular as part of Pete Golding's defensive staff. That is an interesting melding of minds within that staff room.
I would go a step the other way with you and tell you that Kiffin could bring Arnett in as a guy who had a lot of success against him on that side of the ball. I mean, you go back to that 2022 Egg Bowl, and State just dominated Ole Miss up front in that game after a year where the Rebels had run the football on everybody successfully. Maybe you bring Arnett in as a guy who can help you self-scout and say, all right, this is what I'm going to do here. What am I missing? Yeah. What am I giving away? That's possible. But at the same time, working with Golding, I mean, those are two good defensive minds. This is the truth of the matter. You can never have enough smart people under your roof. You can never have enough good coaches on your staff. And Arnett, despite all his failings as a head coach at Mississippi State, is a good defensive coach. There's no question about that in my mind. So is there some troll to this? Of course there is. Of course there's a little troll to this. But it's a smart football move that makes complete sense from a football perspective at the same time.
Isn't the trolling after the fact, though? Like you make the decision not so that you can get juice on Twitter, but then, oh, yeah, you can have a little fun with it after the fact.
The trolling
That's not why you're hiring the guy.
Right. It's just a beneficial side effect of the hire. We'll put it that way.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, he's a good coach, and I control. Hire him.
Yeah, there was a lot of interesting reaction to this. I mean, you had some people who I guess are apparently brain dead trying to do the actually he's not that good of a defensive mind thing today, which, okay, sure. The words of the uninformed. He's very good. He's also not on the field staff. He's an analyst. So he's, right. And considering the buyout situation, I would assume, actually had somebody tell me earlier today, and it's not like reportable because it was more of like a, hey, I'm hearing this, that he's working at Ole Miss for free, quote unquote, because he's getting the buyout from Mississippi State. Anything Ole Miss would pay him would be taken out of the buyout, so what's the difference for him? So if it's not free, it's pennies compared to what you would actually get for a guy like that.
I mean, analysts make what, 50, 60,000 a year?
It's nothing.
This is not cutting in to much of what Mississippi State has to pay.
So you get a guy like that for free, and I think Haydad's point is, I think that's the best one. You can self-scout. Because, like, if Georgia shuts you down, there was a talent gap between Ole Miss and Georgia last year. Georgia out-talented Ole Miss. Mississippi State, while talented, don't get me wrong, is not Georgia. And so Zach Arnett was able to take players that were not Georgia players and still beat you. And so you can sit him down in a room every week. Hey, watch our offense. How did you do it? And then tell me how they're going to try to do it. It makes all the sense in the world to bring him on. The rivalry, I think, has absolutely nothing to do with this at all. It makes it a fun story, but he's not betraying Mississippi State either.
The rivalry is why it's a story at all.
Yeah.
It's an analyst. Analysts get hired all the time. You don't know their names.
Some of you will roll your eyes at this, but I do think it's worth just taking a minute and explaining what the role of an analyst is. It's one of those relatively new buzzwords in college football. I mean, it's been around for a while. But the idea of an analyst is something that people talk about that maybe don't necessarily know what an analyst does. So in the college football coaching world, you have, I mean, I'm being very elementary here, your head coach, your coordinators, and the rest of your on-field staff, all of your position coaches. And you have the training staff, and you have the recruiting staff, and you have the video staff, like all of these entities work to kind of make the staff hierarchy, with the head coach being at the very top. Analysts are a newer thing that are becoming more prominent, where you bring off the field football people into your building to assist, to help. They cannot, by rule, coach in practice. They cannot, by rule, coach on game days. Now, they can be in the box, like in a skybox, watching games and charting things and looking at tendencies and all of that, but they can't be interacting with players on the sideline. But the roles vary based on who you've got, how many you've got, what the head coach wants from those people, what the assistant coaches want from those people. Sometimes it's film breakdown. Sometimes it's self-scouting. You have analysts whose job is to scout the tendencies of your own team. You have analysts whose job is to 3 weeks. So this helps in preparation a lot. You have analysts, your coaching staff is focused on the next game. But you have analysts who are already looking at Texas A&M film because you play them in 3 weeks, who are putting together tendencies, situational charts, all the stuff that they do and keeping up with everything that all of your future opponents are doing. You have analysts who have former head coaching experience. Zach Arnett might be an example here, who has a specialty on one side of the ball. And so he might be helping in putting together a game plan or a specific part of a game plan. If Pete Golding's job is to put together a defensive game plan for a game, there's a scenario where he might say, hey, look, when Alabama gets in this look, we want to be prepared with this type of pressure. Put that together so that we can implement it during practice during the week. So it can be very, very micro. The fewer analysts you have on staff, the broader the responsibility for an analyst. The more of them that you have on staff, the more narrow focused their role becomes. And if you remember the last big contract extension that Lane Kiffin got, part of the language in that was additional money for staff. Well, there's a finite number of coaches and a finite amount of raises that you can give. So that's about hiring new people to come in and do specific things to help with your week-to-week preparation and your longer-range preparation and planning. anything that needs to be added? I'm sure I missed a million things that analysts do, but that's kind of a high-level overview of
and they cannot go on the road and recruit. That's another one.
You could have just made it one sentence. Yeah, they coach but don't recruit.
Yeah, but I think it's more specific than that because they're not allowed to actually coach on the field in practice.
On the field in practice, but they do the job of a coach without interacting with the player, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
most coaches teach the players, analysts teach the coaches. You could almost say.
Connor Stallion sure had a role on the Michigan sideline. He was doing some interacting.
An analyst. Yeah. He had another title.
Yeah, who was it at Alabama recently that got caught doing coaching during a game? And of course, nothing happened because of course, nothing happened. But
wasn't it Butch Jones?
I think it was somebody else more recently than that.
Yeah, but Butch Jones was less of an analyst and more of like a chief of staff for Nick Saban. Yeah. I mean, I think he started out as an analyst and then moved into more of an advisory role for the head coach.
That picture of him washing a Mercedes that everybody pretended like was Nick Saban's Mercedes was really funny. That went around a long time.
Yeah. James and